Hi everyone, this is Alan McKay. Welcome to episode 74. I'm talking with Joaquin Baldwin, who is a layout supervisor for Disney, worked on Frozen, Wreck-It Ralph, and a dozen other amazing films, as well as his own short films. Lots to talk about. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Alan McKay Podcast. Alan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Alan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Alan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on alanmckay.com.
Hey, this is Alan. So just a quick thing to check out, www.vfxrates.com. This is a website that I created to solve a massive problem that we all have. What should we be charging? This is one of the giant mysteries that we all have, and most people feel very uncomfortable talking about, is what we should charge as a freelance rate. And the worst part is when we go to apply for a job, if we ask too much, we risk alienating the employer and never getting that call back. Whereas if we play it safe and ask too little, we not only get taken advantage of, but on top of that, we leave a lot of money on the table, which potentially over the span of a year can lead up to tens of thousands of dollars. So this is a chance for you to quickly go to the website, vfxrates.com, put in a few basic bits of information based on your city, your experience, your discipline, software, little factors that are very important to figuring out what you should be charging as your base rate when you're going to an employer. Now, this is based on a lot of research, but more importantly, it's based on a brain trust of industry experts from different fields that we've all pulled together, and being able to maintain this as a very accurate way to generate what you should be charging. The best part is not only what you should be charging, but also potentially what you could be charging by tweaking a few things to how you present yourself, building your brand, learning to negotiate better. Also, other factors like building an irresistible reel, learning to approach employers the correct way, learning to network, a lot of other factors. I want to share all this information for free. Go to www.vfxrates.com and find out what you should be charging for your hourly VFX rate. All right, so welcome to a brand new episode. I'm really psyched to talk with Joaquin Baldwin. Joaquin is a layout supervisor for Disney. He's worked on lots of cool projects, loads in fact, things like Moana, Zootopia, Big Hero 6, Frozen, Wreck-It Ralph, Tangled, you name it. And the cool thing was, talking with Joaquin, it was just really insightful to get a lot of the lowdown of his background and how he went straight into Disney after going to animation school, but more importantly, his success with his short films. Now, I thought that was really cool, just the way that he was able to carve out such a successful career before he had moved into doing feature film and doing a lot of production work. And it was really just insightful and inspiring getting to talk to him about a lot of his achievements, as well as his insight into a lot of the industry and a lot of what it takes to really succeed in a successful career. So I really enjoyed this episode. It was a lot of fun to do. Joaquin is actually speaking in Paris. It's actually this week. I'm about to hop on a plane and fly over there to speak at the It's Art Masterclass event. So hopefully a lot of you are coming to the event. I'll definitely leave a link in the show notes for the event. But more importantly, if you don't attend this year, then next year, make sure to sign up and get out there. I find it really fun just because personally, I get to hang out with all of the FXTD mentorship students, as well as the live action series students as well. So everyone in the mentorship every year, not everyone, I should say, a lot of us typically will get together, whoever can make it, and we hang out for the week. We drink, we party, we build friendships, and it's just a lot of fun getting that FaceTime with everyone. Obviously, we get to see each other over all the webinars and the forums, the Facebook groups, the chat, the live reviews, and everything else that we're doing. But to actually hang out in person, I kind of feel like every single time that we do catch up, I always feel like we're already been friends for so long that, it's like you'd seen them a couple of days ago. So it's really cool. I'm excited about that. I'm really excited to see everyone. But it's also for the event itself, it's really cool just because I love all the speakers that are coming. People like Mike Blum, who've already done an episode with Ash Thorpe and Dan Rorty, who else? There's so many cool speakers. Neil Blevins, Nathan Fowkes, obviously Joaquin Baldwin, Jason Sheher, like all these other cool people, Andrew Schmidt, Michael Simonetti, who's also been on the podcast, who's done Game of Thrones, and I might try and get him back on for Valerian, which was Luc Besson's new movie. It's coming out soon, that he's the art director for the entire movie, working directly with Luc Besson. So yeah, I mean, anyway, it's just so cool. I get really excited about it just because it's great friends hanging out. Some of these guys are so talented. And on top of that, I really find that this event is so different to all the other ones that I've ever been to, just because the speakers and the attendees hang out the entire week. It isn't like go watch a talk and then go home. We're all having dinner. We're all having lunch. We're all getting drunk. We're having a great time. And it's just this fully immersive thing that I've never really seen such access to the speakers like it has been here. And I think it's just cool. I really enjoy it. And if I were attending, I'd be really inspired by that. Anyway, but, I'm excited about that. That's definitely coming up. I'm excited to get back to the US just because I've got a lot going on. I'm working on a few cool projects right now, but more importantly, we're opening doors to the FXTD mentorship for the one and only time this year. We launched it last year in January, so it's been already well over a year. And, I imagine it's going to fill up pretty quickly, but I'm really excited about that. That's going to be really cool. VFX rates, there's a lot of things I want to do for that as well. There's so much going on. I'm really psyched about everything coming up. I'm going to be going back to LA pretty soon to do some shoots. I might be speaking in Mexico in May as well, in Mexico City. I kind of made the decision earlier this week that I might start doing a few more talks and do a lot more of that kind of stuff. So that's one that landed in my inbox today, but I'm like, you know what? I think it'd be kind of cool to go back to Juarez, to Mexico City and hang out, eat some grasshoppers. It's been a while, so I'm looking forward to that too. Now, that all being said, I'm going to try and keep this short, and we're going to dive right into this. Next episode, I'm going to be talking with Jason Sheher. Jason's another speaker at the It's Art Masterclass. Obviously I'm taking advantage of the fact that this event's coming up, and I wanted to get to know everyone before I showed up. So I thought, what better way than to do podcasts with everyone? And I feel like we're all best friends, even before I've even met any of these speakers. So Jason was so cool. I really love this episode. I loved all of them. Like, everyone's been really awesome, but it was just really insightful talking to him about a lot of his achievements. He's worked, just like a lot of these guys, with Disney, with DreamWorks, and a lot of other really big places. It's really cool. I will leave it there, but let's dive in, and I'll be talking with Joaquin. And this episode I love. Thank you again, Joaquin, for doing it. It's really great just to get so much insight into your creativity, into a lot of what you've achieved. It's been really mind-blowing. I definitely recommend checking this episode out. Let's dive in. Cool, man. Well, I'll just say thanks again for doing this. I really appreciate it. And if you want to start out, just want to give a quick introduction, let us know a bit about yourself.
Yes, my name is Joaquin Baldwin. I'm a layout supervisor at Disney right now. I've been at Disney for 6 years now. Right now I'm working on Wreck-It Ralph 2, and I was on Zootopia, Moana, Big Hero 6, Frozen, a bunch of other features and shorts in there. And I'm a UCLA graduate. I also went to CCAD for undergrad. And I've been pretty much in animation since I was in high school, just on my own, kind of learning on my own.
Awesome.
Most of the time. And then, went through school and then immediately got picked up by Disney after finishing my degree. So I've been there ever since. And it's been pretty awesome.
Cool. No, that's awesome, man. And how did you get started? I mean, initially, how did you kind of discover animation and, fall in love with it and kind of go down this path?
Well, it was actually when I was in high school. I was experimenting with computer graphics. It was just basically every time we would come back from school, I would sit in the computer and try to learn a new piece of software, 2D or 3D, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. It wasn't animation specific. It was just learning different tools. And we kind of had challenges with a classmate where we would try to see who could come up with the coolest weird effects and explosions and whatnot. And that's kind of what taught me more about 3D and compositing and other effects and all that sort of thing. But it wasn't something that serious. I was working as a web designer. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I got into Flash animation. I was doing some Flash animation for websites and all that. And I kind of just took that knowledge and went to school after that point, but without even thinking of going into animation still. I was going to go for web design or for graphic design. And then I kind of hated that, so I changed my majors. It wasn't fun, and I liked the teamwork that was going on in the animation department, the film department, and just decided to go for that. And I was like, I kind of have some knowledge in this field already, so might as well,
Mhm.
And at that point, I kind of started falling in love with it because I saw the power of narrative films more than anything. I didn't consider it as a way of telling stories before. It was more a way of showing cool graphics and whatnot. But once I got into it more seriously, I really dug the idea of making stories and creating characters and exploring concepts like that. So yeah, it was kind of my second year in undergrad that I really became more like, okay, I want to be an animator now finally.
Mm-hmm. No, that's awesome, man. That's really great. I was curious, like, what software were you kind of toying around with when you first started out?
God, I don't even remember. It wasn't in Photoshop back then. It was PaintShop Pro. I remember that.
Oh, PSP, I love that.
Yeah, I was on for 3D stuff. There was 3D FX was one.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there were spheres and text, and you apply materials and hit render and wait a few hours for just a shitty 320 by 240 little render to come out. I was using Bryce, the very early versions.
Yeah, I was actually just gonna say earlier when you were saying that everyone that you couldn't really have like a very narrative storytelling arc to anything you do, but it's more to show off cool graphics. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, I thought of Bryce when you mentioned that.
Yeah, it was that was it. Like it just looked awesome and cool, and 3D effects also had some preset things like that. So there was I was using Poser just to
and Poser was the other one. Sorry, but like Poser and Bryce were the two, like, people would jump into 3D and be like, oh yeah, I'm an animator because I did some stuff in Poser, or I'm awesome at environments because I use Bryce. So there were the two ones. Sorry,
weren't they the same company that did Bryce and Poser? I think it was.
Really? I don't know. That would blow my mind if it was. I never really looked at who developed them, but
because they had the same type of menus and style of buttons and all that. So
yeah, I mean, it was always just the same mentality because like you had even back then, Maya was out, Max was out, and it was just funny because like I started kind of messing with 3D pretty early on, but I still remember when I discovered Vista Pro, which was kind of the predecessor to Bryce, and it wasn't as popular, but it did, as a DOS-based program, but it did like really great environments. And then Bryce came out; he had all these presets. You could paint a 256 grayscale map interactively, and so it was just like you could create environments pretty quickly, and everyone had these desert environments. And I think there was there's RAF, like raph.com, which I checked the other day; it's still there. But the other one was 3D Cafe, and those were the two like kind of gallery sites that everyone posted to, and everything would be Bryce. So it would just be old Bryce all day long, and then Poser to get like really weird humanoid characters because you could just mix match body parts and then throw in some animation. So I don't know, for whatever reason, I always kind of felt like those two were the cheap ones that you could get good results fast, but they would look identical to everyone else's, So.
And they were always in the free software bundles on CDs like 3D World and all those magazines. So that's kind of how I got my demos and of course I got my illegal copies from friends and all that stuff, just so I could really play with them.
And that was the thing. Like PaintShop Pro was shareware, so I mean you get it, but you could pay for it if you wanted to. So I don't know why, but I always nerd out a little bit about like all those kind of tools and what everyone starts with. But that's awesome, and I guess. If you want to talk about your short films for a moment, because you got Sebastian's Voodoo, and hopefully I'm going to say it right, but Papiroflexia.
That's right.
I'm Australian too, so I butcher everything. But I mean, I'd love to know a bit about these. I mean, what's the origin of both of these, and like how did they start?
So those were my two more popular shorts, and I did them both while at UCLA. And Papiroflexia is probably more personal to me. It was my first narrative short, and it was I've been doing origami since I was like 5 years old. Like it's really early on. And Papiroflexia means basically paper folding. It's a word for origami in Spanish. And so I kind of thought like I was in school, and I was in a poetry class, and they had us write a sonnet. And I wrote a sonnet about paper folding, and it was the most horrible thing. I'm very embarrassed about it by now, but it had very good images. It was extremely visual, and it was almost basically the script for the short. It was almost image by image what happens on the short. And so I kind of based it off of a friend of mine. His name is Fred, and based a character on him. And he doesn't do any paper folding or whatever. It's just for his personality. And decided to just try and do that 2D film. Try to find a way to create that effect that it looks like paper is actually folding somehow. It's super easy to cheat actually, so it wasn't a problem. And so yeah, it was very personal. It was just like I wanted to show something about environmentalism, and my mom is she's an environmental educator, so there's that side of it. There's my friendship in there with my friend Fred, and there's also the aspect of creating something new, and also the whole paper folding aspect. So I just try to dump everything different passions of mine in one short. And yeah, so that was, I think that's why that one became so successful, because it's just a very passionate project for myself. And then Sebastian's Voodoo is kind of odd, because that was my first 3D short. And I had nothing to do with Voodoo in any way. So I didn't know anything about it either. I had to do some research, so I made sure not to insult too much of the religion, and to me, it was simply a concept thing. So I had an idea what would happen if, it was actually originally was a comedy. Believe it or not, it was what would happen if two voodoo dolls were fighting each other? Like, would they try to pin the other one or try to pin themselves, And I was thinking like this Mortal Kombat type of silly short where they would stab each other instead of the opponent. And I'm like, oh, it's kind of cool. But then I thought it's like, okay, there's a cool idea here. It's an interesting concept, something I haven't seen before at least. And I'm trying to do something pretty stupid with it. So I decided to rethink it, try to find a way to make it a little more meaningful. I thought, since they're sacrificing themselves in a way, it's the theme of self-sacrifice will be like the core of it, and just started coming up with ideas for that. So yeah, that was all done in with Maya and After Effects, and it was basically I was using all the computers at UCLA, which are like 6 computers there overnight, just calculating my render times and setting up stuff to render at night and come back the next day and try to pick up all the different files and try to figure out how much I could do with just Maya render. I couldn't use Mental Ray or anything else. So it was just a lot of compositing later on, just rendering a few passes here and there, try to put it all together very quickly. And but yeah, it was a very, very quick project. It was 10 months from start of storyboards to the final.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
But it was...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, what were some of the big challenges with doing that?
Well, mainly computing power was horrible. I mean, I was just doing it on a laptop most of the time. So it was very slow. I had to, because it was a school project, I also had to do all my rigs, all my textures, all my lighting, everything else. So I was learning. I didn't know what compositing even meant at that time. I had to look it up in the dictionary or online dictionary at least, figure out what it means. How do you do passes? I knew blending modes from Photoshop, but I didn't know you could apply that to motion stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. You can put different lights and blend them together. And I was like blown away. So it was a lot of just learning as you're doing the project. That was the hardest part, I think. I had no clue if my current skill set was enough to be able to finish the project, or if I could learn enough to be able to finish it in time. So I just had to hope that everything was going to be okay and just keep moving forward without knowing how it's gonna be done.
That's really cool. And I guess this is a double question, but were there any pitfalls along the way or moments of doubt, anything like that, when you're going through the whole process?
I think mostly during the story stage. I didn't know how to solve the story at some points. I was going a different route entirely. I had only the 2 main characters. I didn't have the other characters in there, so it didn't make any sense. It was like I didn't know what the story was for the longest time. I was just doing sketches and I actually started modeling and all that stuff without knowing where it was headed. And that point is really, really scary. You don't know what your project is going to be. You have to be done with it at some point. And then another one perhaps it was scary for a short time, but not for too long. It was when I first figured out my story and did the storyboards and all that stuff, and I had to pitch it at school. The main critique that I would get from almost everyone was, why can't you make it a happy ending? No one's going to like watching this. And I'm like, no, that defeats the whole purpose of the short. But I kept thinking to myself, like, no one's going to fucking like this then. Like, I'm never going to make it to film festivals or anything else, because who's going to want to see a depressing short like this. And I think that ended up being the biggest strength of it. That was unexpected and darker, and people weren't expecting to see something like that, especially for a student film.
Well, that's right. I mean, at the same time, like, if everyone tells you, why don't you make it happy, because the majority are requesting that, like, why not go the opposite and do something different? And if anything, having something like this, you can convey a lot more emotion than trying to do a happy-go-lucky thing. So that's cool. That's really cool. And how was it received? Like, both of these, they got a lot of attention.
Well, yeah, Papiroflexia got into a few festivals right away and started getting some small awards. And then all of a sudden it got picked up by the Cannes Short Film Corner, and then it kind of exploded from there. So I think Papiroflexia, I think, got the award at CineQuest that got it qualified for Academy Award nominations as well. It didn't get nominated, but it got in the short list.
Cool.
And same with Sebastian's Voodoo, but I think with that one it was USA Film Festival that made it qualify. So at some point they just started going crazy, going through all the festivals, and for me it was like a full-time job. I kind of forgot about school for a whole year, but it just ended up submitting to film festivals, keeping track of all that stuff, traveling, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were just, to me, it was like a game. Like, how many can I get into? And if I get an award that is, some cash award, can I reinvest this and see how many more I can get into again? It was like this crazy cycle that would never stop.
That's cool.
Even yesterday, I got I'm still getting emails. Yesterday was the last one. People asking to still submit the old films to new festivals. I'm like, why you want that? It's like, how many years old? 10 years old? I don't know.
But that's great, man. I don't know why, but like, I'm always interested in this sort of thing because, again, it's kind of the origin of like how a lot of us get started, and especially when we all work in film where it's a lot more commercial. So these are the kind of roots of how we made it, and no, that's great. I mean, again, for other people who want to kind of create their own short films, I mean, what would you say, like, do you think it's really beneficial both in terms of growing as an artist? I mean, doing everything yourself, I kind of feel like is the ultimate way to really grow and have a full understanding of especially this industry and a lot of, all the areas of it. But in addition to that, like, do you think it really kind of helps your career initially, having gone through that experience?
I think it depends on where you're aiming. For me, I mean, going into cinematography and layout, it was critical to be able to experience all that, because layout becomes slightly a generalist type of career. You can't just know camera stuff, but that's not going to take you enough anywhere. But if what you're interested in is modeling, and that's all you really want to do, and you love ZBrush, and that's your life, and you don't feel like you need to go and learn every single aspect of creating animated shorts, I don't think it's that critical. But anything more related to story, production, or directing, even animation itself, I think it's much more interesting to explore all that. And but aside from the career path, I think it's just good for just general knowledge and life experience. Like, you're never going to have that chance again to just go out with your own little short film, travel the world, or at least, the US or whatever, and meet all these people, get all these contacts. It was absolutely awesome for networking, and then just to travel. I mean, that's one of the things I love to do in my free time anyway. So this was a perfect excuse to go all over the place. So I would suggest that, even if you're not necessarily going to get into directing or anything like that, it's worth it. It's fun to do something like this. It's just, learning something new.
That's awesome. Yeah, like one of my buddies, he's the animation director, Dave Clayton. He's the animation director for Weta, and I don't know what awards it received at the time, but like I followed him around for a while when he and another guy, Andrew Silk, both put together a short film back in, I think it was 01 or 02, called Cane Toad, and it was based in Australia.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you've seen it? Yeah. So.
Oh yeah.
That was awesome because like I ended up going to a bunch of film festivals with him, and just everywhere we went, it was crazy because there's one place that there was 5 different awards being given out. One was like best animated short, one was best overall short, one was the funniest short, and there was another one, and then there was the random award, and Cane Toad won all 4, and then every filmmaker was hoping, because like there was some really amazing shorts and some really emotional ones as well, and everyone was just hoping that someone else would win the random one, and it won that as well. And it's just like everywhere we went, it was just getting so much attention. But for me, like not being a filmmaker per se, but getting just to kind of witness those two guys who I love their story, because like for them, They both worked at a small kind of commercial house in Australia called Cutting Edge, and they took 6 months off. They saved up their money, took 6 months off, moved into an apartment together, and just day in, day out worked on Cane Toad. And I got to meet those guys at the very end, kind of like as it was all coming together. They were doing the Foley, they were doing all the bits and pieces. I was going to help out doing some stuff for it, but I was busy on a feature at the time. But yeah, it's just like really cool just kind of seeing it all come together. And again, just that sort of momentum that picks up, like when one place hears about something, more people hear about it, and bit by bit it circulates. And yeah, I mean, I think that the buzz and the excitement, even when it's not yours, just getting to witness it is just really amazing.
And it's funny how it comes back to, like you mentioning Cane Toad, and that's one of the first shorts I saw online, like way back. And I don't know who I emailed from that team, the directors or whoever.
Well, there's only two. There was Andrew Silk and Dave Clayton. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know which one of them I ended up email, but way back, what was that, 2001?
Yeah, I think it was. Maybe? Yeah, it was 2001. I think it was like December 2001.
Yeah, that was when I was my last year of high school, and I was running this website in Paraguay. It was animacion.com.
Mm-hmm.
So a friend of mine who was a big domainer, he bought a bunch of top level domains, so single words, very specific ones like that, and he put me in charge of that one, animacion.com. It was basically, it's like a Newgrounds, but collection of short films, but not Flash specific.
Mm-hmm.
And I would contact different directors and animators and just say, can I put your short in our site, and can we put interviews and stuff like that? I would never got too much into the interview side, but it was more of a collection of Flash animation and a couple other things too.
Cool.
But I don't remember if I got a reply from those guys. But back then I was emailing these guys. I remember emailing Carlos Baena, who I ended up working with recently as well.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's a funny dude.
Yeah, and so you start meeting people through these silly, stupid shorts from way back, and like I will have some grounds to start a conversation at least today if I saw those guys again. So it all comes back somehow.
No, it's awesome. And yeah, even Carlos, like one of my buddies, Delcio Gomez, who's actually been on the podcast, he was telling me like, oh, you got to get Carlos on here because he's really cool, and we're working together on his new project. And it's just kind of funny because, yeah, obviously last year Carlos was in Paris as well, so you got to hang out finally. But Carlos is one of those guys that I loved all of his animation back in the 90s. It was just, he's doing this really cool stuff. It was him and Keith Lango are the two animators for me that I kind of followed around and really loved all the stuff they were knocking out. So yeah, it's just, again, it kind of brings you back, kind of seeing the stuff that was going on back then. It's so inspiring. And I guess like for you, like when you went from UCLA, you went straight into Disney. So like, I guess that was like a pretty massive turnaround for you. And I guess having all the clout and the short films that you had achieved, I mean, it was, I guess, a bit of a no-brainer going in there. But what was that experience like, going straight out of college into Disney, which is a pretty impressive feat?
Well, luckily they have what they call the talent development program, or at least that's what it was called when I started there. I don't know if it's basically like an internship, but when you're out of school already. So they test you out, they see how good you are, and you might not have any industry experience at all, but that's fine. So because I had no idea how a pipeline really worked other than what I was doing on my own laptop. So I didn't know how production really was handled, anything like that. I just had my own Maya experience in there.
Mm-hmm.
So that was great. That's I think most big studios are doing something similar at the time. It's a great way for people that are just out of school to be able to experience that. Also, internships I think are fantastic. It's like I keep seeing guys that start with internships there, and then they go graduate and immediately they get picked up again because you know them, you know how they work, they're cool guys and all that stuff. So It's very easy for HR to bring those guys back. But yeah, it was to me it was I don't know, it was fascinating. I wasn't like a lot of people, like this crazy Disney freak that was my dream job because I just love those characters type of thing. I love animation in general, but I wasn't like specifically about Disney. But I just happened to land there at the right time. It was right after Tangled.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of when the studio picked up again. So I was happy for that. Like since then, everything I worked on has been something I really loved working on. So it's like immediately was a crazy learning experience. Just you're thrown right into it, and but it's not that much high stress. It's simply just show them what you can do and do your best. Don't do any overtime because they won't pay you for that anyway, and they don't want you to work extra because they want to see how much you can get done in this fixed amount of time anyway. That's the whole point. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's cool. And yeah, Tangled was a massive reboot for them because I mean, I got a lot of friends who are on Toy Story 3, Disney's version of that, and yeah, obviously after that kind of faded away, I'll say, yeah, Tangled was kind of like the new team and the new everything. So I mean, that's kind of been the core of what's now like Disney's whole 3D team. So that's really cool. So I guess I mean I already can guess what the answer of this is, but you obviously kind of came from doing layout initially and moved into more supervising layout. But what was your attraction for doing that? And I'm guessing what you're going to say is that having the freedom to actually have more creative input on a lot of things rather than finaling shots. And I mean, I've known a lot of successful directors who've come from doing layout because you get so much access to the directors and a lot more creative influence on projects. But I'd love to hear your take.
Yeah, it's something similar actually. I doing animatics, which is what we would call it in school, it was part of the process, but it wasn't the most exciting part necessarily. I was actually my goal at that point when I finished my shorts and I'm like, what do I do next? I want to direct a feature. That's usually what you tell yourself. So that was it. Like I'm gonna aim for this thing, and how do I get to that point? So the clear way was first storyboarding.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can draw pretty well, but I hate drawing most of the time. I don't enjoy it. If I can be forced to draw and I'll draw nicely, but I don't enjoy sitting there and drawing for hours and hours. It's not my thing. And I was looking for an alternative to that. And I had a storyboard portfolio. I submitted that to DreamWorks, and I got a rejection for that. It wasn't really that strong. And then I talked to Dean DeBlois, the director of How to Train Your Dragon. I saw him at SIGGRAPH one time, and I was like, what do you recommend? And he actually said layout is probably the second best over story to get into that. And because of that same reason, you are closely in touch with the directors, and also because you are not working on individual shots, you're working on segments of the film. And that means you have a beginning, middle, and end with multiple shots in there, and you have to tell a story from beginning to end and know how to handle that. And that sounded more appealing to me. I was into photography already, but not that much yet. I was starting into that. And it sounded like an interesting challenge. I understood cameras and lenses and composition, all that stuff. So I thought, this might be an interesting thing. It ended up being a lot better than I ever expected. Like I didn't expect it to be the most, but like if I could pick any job at the moment in different departments like that, I'd still pick layout. I think it's more fun. I don't like to sit down and polish something forever and ever. I'd rather just start a new version and make it dirty and just send it down, So that's there's a lot of appeal to me for that side.
You have a phobia of too many keyframes. You're like, it's too much to tweak. I'm starting from scratch.
Yeah, it's like if this is sliding, it's like whatever. I either leave it dirty and ugly, and I don't care because I know animation's gonna take care of it, or I'll start over and do it again.
That's cool.
But I don't want to sit there and clean it for hours and hours.
Cool. That's awesome, man. And I'm just curious, like, what's your favorite project to date? Because I mean, you've worked on so many very iconic, very awesome projects.
For now, still is Zootopia. It is my favorite Disney film at the moment, and my favorite one I worked on and most fun working on. It was my first time being a supervisor. Actually, no, Feast was my first before that one, but Zootopia was it was a different role. Feast was DP and Zootopia was supervisor, and so it became this thing where I actually had a lot of control over some sequences and a lot of control over tool development and just a lot of creative input on it. And the message of the film, of course, today is still the strongest thing we can have out there. So I love that it's a year later people are still talking about it.
Yeah,
and it's extremely meaningful.
That's awesome, man. What were some of the big challenges of working on that?
Sets.
Yeah,
it's just a lot of heavy stuff. The whole city was heavy. The characters too. So it was mostly like fighting slowness. How to work in real time. You never work in real time. You just you do what you can. But that was pretty tough.
My background's doing effects and simulation, so I know all about waiting.
Yeah, it's not as bad, but It was tricky. Hours weren't that crazy, but it was a challenging, just so many characters and variations and different types of environments. It was very big.
That's cool, man. And I'm just curious, like, what were your challenges on like Wreck-It Ralph, for instance?
Oh, and the first one, that was 6 years ago.
Yeah. Well, now you're doing the sequel, so
Yeah.
full circle.
Well, back then I was still learning. I was just out of the training program, so everything was a challenge. I was just trying to learn the tools. I was making my sequences. So,
And
go ahead.
oh no, I was just continuing on from, I'd love to hear what you're going to say, but yeah, I mean, again, like, I guess you're right. It is a long time ago, so I guess part of it also is just, what's kind of evolved. Let's say this time around, from what you can talk about, how do you think things have changed since doing the first one to, let's say, looping back and doing a second time around, and the experiences maybe in terms of technology that's evolved, or just the team that you're working with?
Well, I can't tell you anything about the production specifically.
Yeah, as
Nothing at all,
me more.
but yeah.
What I'm saying is like more like today's date, let's say,
Mhm.
rather than specifically project driven.
Well, what I was going to say is, even though I can't tell you anything specific, a lot of people think, oh, it's a sequel. This is going to be easy, just grab the files open and modify,
Totally. Copy paste.
There's absolutely nothing like that. So it's a huge challenge. Everything is, your processors are 10 times faster and your files are 100 times heavier. So, it's never easy. It's a completely different film, that everything is new and everything is, it's always a new challenge. Doesn't matter what film it is.
That's cool. And what about Frozen? Again, just kind of curious about that too, since it's one of the big films that, anywhere you go, you're going to see T-shirts and you hear songs like stuck in your head from that film. So,
well, to me, I know that's the biggest thing we probably worked on, in the sense of how massive it is worldwide. But it's not a film that for me is as personal. This is not that's not the type of film I enjoy for my own sake usually, even though I really like that film. But yeah, that was more straightforward. It's not as crazy as all the other films we've done. It's a more classic cinematographic style. It's more elegant, and you don't have car races or crazy chases or anything like that. It was simpler, definitely.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I've got a lot of buddies who were working over on that project, like Dan Rice and Corey Butler, and a lot of Blur Studio people actually. But how big were teams like typically for, let's say, that sort of scale of animated feature?
You mean the whole team or just the departments?
I'd say the whole team.
Oh, it's wow, probably
300 or
no more, 400, 500 probably.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
It changes from one to the next. I think there's also the people that are not necessarily a permanent part of the team. So it's probably around 500, I would guess.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, so I was curious because I figure out this is something that you'll be able to touch on a lot is I always think it's really important to specialize no matter what you're doing. It's just to have one thing that you do stand out on, even though it's, I think, critical to still learn other aspects. But what's your opinion on that in terms of, let's say if someone wanted to be an animator, would you still think you would recommend to them to learn to light and do all the other things a little bit too, so that at least that way they have that knowledge, or say specifically do this and don't worry about the other stuff, just get really good at that one craft?
I'm kind of in between that. Like for myself, like I if I'm in layout, I'm going to learn things that help me with that, but are not necessarily that same field. Like that's why I love photography, or I love 3D printing. That helps me with 3D modeling and stuff like that. And I love writing and reading, so that helps with storytelling. But doesn't mean that you have to just do layout. That doesn't mean that I have to learn how to do perfect lighting. And I still might, if I had to make a film today, I wouldn't have a clue how to start with lighting and all that stuff. I haven't done that in ages, and I was doing just Maya lights way back. So I don't think it's necessary to learn everything in there, but at least don't just stay in that one thing that for, like, if it's animation, go and learn about psychology and about other things that will be anatomy, of course, but not just anatomy. Learn about biology, because that's going to also help with your understanding of anatomy. Just try to get all those other fields that are very closely related somehow. And if it's back again related to film specifically, sure, that's great, but I don't think it's not necessary.
Yeah, I think exactly the same kind of thought process. You know, whatever you're interested in, you find like the three or so things closest to it, and you start to learn those because that way you're going to grow and you're going to connect all those things together. You know, and I say as like a technical director or let's say effects, learning lighting, compositing, and programming, always going to aid you. It doesn't mean that you need to know all of them, but it definitely helps. Whereas obviously, you know, things with animation, you know, going and learning a bit of comedy, or going and, you know, learning more about timing, you know, whatever it's going to be, anatomy, especially for modeling, whatever it is that is going to help you and benefit you. And it doesn't need to be VFX related, but, you know, I think whatever you're doing, it's always about growth and personal growth, especially.
Yeah, and also, you know, you don't need to feel like that huge weight that you have to know about everything. For example, like I don't know anything about music. I love music. I have my personal tastes. I could direct a, you know, a composition to be towards the type of feeling I want it to be, but I will never be a musician. It's just too late for me. I'm not gonna learn that. I'm not gonna have the time in my life to dedicate to that, and that's fine. You know, there's other people that are gonna do it better, and I expect them to, you know, to be that integral part of the team. So it's, you know, it's some people think that you gotta do everything. It's not necessary. Just do what you can. Focus on one aspect, do a little bit of everything else, and then when you need help, just know who to ask.
Yeah, I think that's great, man. I've only got one or two more questions, but I might loop back for a second to Sebastian's Voodoo and just talk about the music there. Like, how involved were you in the composition of the music for it?
The composition itself, it was composed by Nick Favola. So he created, basically, he based it off the storyboards I gave him and some guidelines. Like I specifically gave him some different drum. I specifically gave him some tracks from Voodoo drums that I found online and downloaded myself. So there's different tunes or rhythms, I guess, for Voodoo drums that represent different things, and that was kind of the beginning of it. But I was saying I want something slightly melodic. I want it to be you know, very based on strings and then also on percussion. And that's about as much as my input was originally, and just told him these are the beats, this is an important area because of this reason, it needs to have a build up here, and that's about it. And he just went crazy and started doing this insane percussion thing with it, and it was, you know, old temp stuff, of course, and it's already sounded pretty cool. And from there I ended up contacting Greg Ellis, who's a really awesome percussionist here in LA, and he did, like, you know, the percussion tracks for the 300, the Matrix, Iron Man, like a whole bunch of awesome films. And, you know, he loved the film, and he said, yeah, I'll do it for, you know, however much you're paying your other musicians. I'm like, holy crap. So it's, you know, and at that point, that's where you really plus the whole project. Like, we had this nice score. It was very rhythmic and very powerful. And you take it over there and you sit with Greg, and he brings, like, okay, I got this exotic rattle thing that is made out of the husks of spider eggs, and it sounds like this. And it's like, holy shit, I've never heard anything like that before, and it also has some meaning behind it. And he would just improvise based on the rhythms that were there a little bit. Yeah, that's where it just took off like crazy. All those, like, exotic instruments. You know, the strings and all that stuff was pretty standard, but the percussion was over the top awesome.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's really awesome. And did you ever do anything like participating in, let's say, the 11 Second Club or any of those sort of animation challenges?
I did not. You know, I've been antisocial my whole life until this point. I was a lurker in a lot of those places. Just always looked at everyone else's work and didn't comment, didn't do anything, you know. I had my own projects at home, but yeah, I didn't participate enough, and I kind of regret that. I would have learned a lot by exposing my work to a lot more people early on like that.
No, I was always curious because, I kind of grew up with mainly a lot of animators. So I had guys like, you know, Dave Clayton I mentioned, and James Bennett, who's one of the founders of Zerply, who's, you know, bounced around a lot, and a lot of other guys are all animation. So whether I liked it or not, I would, you know, just be watching them all the time, just digging through so much reference and just living and breathing animation. So because of that, indirectly, you know, I did. And I was actually interviewing Nathan Fowler the other day, who was at DreamWorks. So he was talking about Emperor's New Groove and a lot of other related projects to that, which, again, you know, I love that I got to appreciate them a lot more during that time, just because you have people around you who just watch that stuff on loop all day long, which is always fun. And yeah, it's really cool. Like for you, what about reference? Like, where do you typically source a lot of your reference for what you do? Assuming you do, but I can't imagine you wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I at one point in time, I was like having a collection of movies on my hard drive, just films that I like. And I even went and like, I would pause it and then take screenshots all the time. And, I did that for so long, just collecting screenshots. And I can tell you, I never looked at a single one after I took the screenshot. I still have that folder somewhere, but I never look at it. I think it's just watching the films became the learning. I didn't have to go back and reference all the time. I do look at some stuff online, like was it Richard Evans? I think has a blog. I think that's his name. That's basically that's what it is stills from different films and all that stuff.
Cool.
Actually, let me see. I think I have it bookmarked.
I'm looking it up myself. There's Richard J. Evans, which is not him. Yeah,
No.
I'll have to dig through it myself. But that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's that, and then there's nowadays I look at a lot of YouTubers like Tony Zhao and Nerdwriter and stuff like that, where they just do film analysis, that sort of thing. I think those end up being very instructive and very very condensed, like in a format of 5 to 8 minutes. I find that I can learn a lot, and just and other than that, it's just become taking pictures and watching movies. That's what I do all the time. So
yeah, that's definitely one thing I nerd out a little bit. Is there's a couple of DPs that I follow from time to time who just essentially break down other DPs' work on feature film, and it's just one of those things that whether you appreciate it or not, is getting a lot of insight from someone who's just sat there for hours kind of analyzing someone else's work and trying to get every single bit they can from it. There's a lot that you can kind of get from that, which I always find enjoyable.
Yeah, no, and there's just so many approaches that are different from what the approach that we normally do for animated features, that is very clear and concise. So getting to the experimental side of things, you just gotta be watching stuff outside of your usual stuff.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I've got like one or two questions left, but mainly just to do with like, do you have any references or recommended resources you might recommend for people who want to learn more about animation and layout and kind of really grow their skill set?
That's a tough part. I've actually
It is a
looked
tough
for
one.
yeah, for layout specifically. I can't find anything. There's a couple of videos on YouTube out there that are so basic that they don't really tell you anything. It's really tough. The problem is too that for layout you need to learn about photography, and that takes years to really understand. Like, you can tell people about a wide lens and a telephoto lens, but until you go out and shoot, you're not gonna really understand the difference. I think it's photography classes is probably more approachable. You're not gonna find layout classes, but a photography class is very, very easy to find. And then animation specific stuff. I learned most of the stuff online just by doing tutorials. A lot of stuff from Noman and other resources like that. So learning software becomes this is just a tool. It doesn't matter what software you end up learning, but the more important part, which I think is how do you tell the story, how do you, the cinematography part of things is basically that's hard to find good resources on.
Yeah.
You don't want to have to pay for, tens of thousands of dollars for a very expensive class that lasts a few years. People want that instant gratification just online, just click through and that's it. But
yeah, that's exactly it. People want it to like the Matrix. They just want to hit a button and they know kung fu and they can go out and kick some butt. No one has the patience to actually push through. That's great, man. And I guess like you already kind of mentioned a little bit, because I completely agree. I mean, if you want to learn something, go out and do it. And I think that as much as you want to read about something or touch base on something a little bit, it's not until you're actually really in the middle of it all that's where you get that growth and you really get that kind of aha moments. And like for you, like how critical do you think personal work is for others if they want to break in the industry? And like, do you have any advice on that subject?
Well, I keep doing my own personal work all the time too, and I think it's not just for keeping me satisfied, but also to learn from it. Like, for example, one thing I've been doing for the last several years is when I take a picture and I post it online, I write down the information, like what ISO, what f-stop, what shutter speed, and if I was using what lens and at how many millimeters, and what type of tripod or polarizer lens or whatever I was. I try to remember that first of all, just because remembering it becomes important, but then I write it down. And once I write it down, I can see why I made those choices and what choice could have been better. But if I was just posting the picture, this is the one I like, and didn't study it after the fact, after hitting the shutter, then it becomes just, it was an instant in time that kind of got forgotten after that point. But I think, going back to being able to analyze your own work, post it online, let people comment. People are going to hate it and love it or whatever. That doesn't really matter too much. I noticed that the amount of likes or clicks something gets is completely irrelevant. At some point, it's like your best work will always be the one that no one ever notices anyway. But yeah, it's super important. I mean, it's more about staying, feeling fulfilled and happy. That's why I just like going out and shooting stuff. It's to me, that's what makes me happy and just makes me feel like I'm doing something productive and learning. My regular work does teach me a lot, but it's not as exciting as, anything else I could be doing out, road trips or travel or whatever else like that.
Yeah, that's cool. And I've never heard that before. Like, obviously, as a DP or as a VFX soup, you're always going to be documenting every shot that's ever taken. But purely just from your own personal reference, I've never heard anyone kind of mention that before. But I really love the idea actually of writing down all the technical specifications after you shoot anything, because essentially you can look at that and you can kind of see the recipe of, like, the blueprint of how you made that. And each time you look at that and you compare it to another one, you might say, oh, this shot here, I could have used like a less stops in it to get the right kind of image I wanted, or I really like the feel of that. What were the the specs that I used on that particular shot, so I can replicate that again, or which lens in some cases if you want that shallow depth of field, or
also
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, or you also find patterns, and that's important because you realize what you've been doing constantly. Like my last trip, I've been posting stuff from the last couple of weeks. I shot pretty much everything at f11, and I'm like, that was absolutely stupid. I know that my lens is sharpest at f11, so I picked that as my default and did not make any creative choices. And I didn't realize until after I kept posting every day and the same, I type F11 over and over again. I'm like, I really didn't think this through. I could have done much better by making more specific choices rather than letting, the default just sit there. So it's a good way to see patterns on how you are handling your own work all the time.
Yeah, no, I like that, because again, like, as an artist, like whether you're supervising or whether you're more just starting out, that's the one thing you'll learn pretty quickly is, if you're paying attention, is the habits of your supervisor, whether it's the director or whether it's your lead. It doesn't matter. Like, you quickly learn what they like, probably a lot more than they do. I mean, I can always tell like what shots are mine, because I'll instantly look at something and say, well, I know I end up grading everything more contrasty. Whereas one of my friends, he's a DP over at Digital Domain, and I was able to call that stuff out before he could. I'm like, dude, you always like older lenses because you like more of a washed out feel, and he's the complete opposite to me. But that's just it. Like, you start to be able to tell people's habits before they know them themselves, and it's just because you're usually the one dealing with all of their work. But for you to actually notice your habits and say, well, I'm going to break certain ones just because I tend to, work in this hue, or I tend to do this. I think that's pretty special. So, I mean, yeah, I love the idea. I haven't heard of it, and I think it's awesome.
Cool,
man. Well, I'll start to wrap things up, but like, one or two things I'd love to hear about is like, what's your, like, we're both going to be in Paris in less than 30 days. Patrice has been firing out reminders to me, freaking out. So, what's your talk going to be on in Paris?
Mine is going to be on cinematography and layout, and I called it, what was it? Cinematography and layout, a cognitive toolkit.
Cool. Which
sounds pretty like out there, and it's kind of on purpose. I'll go through that during the presentation, what a cognitive toolkit means and why I think it's important. And it's basically going to be, I'm not going to try to just teach the stuff that everyone already hears about in school. I'm going to try to find some concepts that are not talked about as much when you're learning, and you only learn when you're in the studio environment. And how you can apply that, and giving them names, and how putting those names to those things really matters, because then you can really talk about them and understand them better.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely be sitting in that class for sure. That's great, man. And I guess for anyone who wants to find out more about you or reach out to you, what links would you recommend they check out?
Well, my website is joaquinbaldwin.com. And in every social media, I am at JOA Baldwin. So JOA Baldwin on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. That's pretty much what I use. I don't get into Tumblr and other sites.
You'll never end. You're like, okay, now Pinterest and Snapchat and
yeah.
Cool, man. And I'll definitely leave links to all that stuff in the show notes for sure.
That's great.
Cool, man. No, again, I just want to say thank you for this. This has been awesome.
No, thank you. It's fun. And it'll be awesome seeing you in Paris. And yeah, that'll be pretty incredible.
Cool, man. Looking forward to it. Okay, so again, thank you, Joaquin, for doing that episode. That was really cool getting to hear all about his achievements. I found it really inspiring, and I loved talking with Joaquin throughout this whole episode. Next episode is coming up. That is going to be with Jason Scheer from Disney and DreamWorks and a lot of other cool places. I love this episode. We just kind of threw the script out the window and talked about a lot of really cool stuff. It really reminds me of a lot of discussions I've had with Ash Thorpe. Just really inspiring. I really love doing it, and I'm hoping you'll enjoy it too. So that will be episode 75. Check it out. All right. So that all being said, I'll talk to you soon. Have a good week and rock on.